Thank you all for being here today. We are gathered together to lift up and support families of two people who have been taken from them in recent months. One is Marquise MJ Jackson. The other is Shahir Diamond Jackson McDonald. These two people are not related. Members of their families, both families where they were born, but also families they have chosen, are here to urge the public to contact Philadelphia police with any truthful information that could lead to the apprehension of a suspect. I'll get into that in a moment, and the arrest and prosecution of all individuals who are responsible for MJ's and for Diamond's deaths. Obviously, losing a loved one to violence is among the most traumatic things that anyone can suffer, but I want to thank the families and loved ones of MJ and Diamond and all of the survivors of violence who are with us today for your courage, your relentless pursuit of justice for queer and trans victims. Let me quickly acknowledge the speakers you will hear from today. We have ADA Joanne Pescator, who is the supervisor of the Homicide Non-Fatal Shooting Unit. We have ADA Helen Park, who among other things is the head of the carjacking unit in the DA's office. We have DAO LGBTQ plus liaison Kelly Burkhart, who's here. We have, and pardon me if I mispronounce, we have Mayura Swan, Kiara Anderson, who are nieces of Tracy Mia Green. ADA Brian Keene is here. He prosecuted a case involving Kendall Stevens, who is also here. Kendall is a survivor and a member of the DAO LGBTQ plus advisory committee. We have Natasha Daniela de Lima McGlynn, who's the executive director of the Anti-Violence Partnership of Philadelphia. Those are all the people who will be speaking. But I also want to acknowledge others who are here. Marquia Jackson, sister of Marquise MJ Jackson. Linda Jackson, mother of Shahir Diamond Jackson McDonald. Pamela Smith, mother of Tracy Mia Green. Members of their chosen and born families. We also have a couple of people from the PPD Homicide Unit to remember, although they couldn't be here today for logistical reasons, and they are Homicide Detective Matt Berkheimer and Homicide Detective Michael Livewell, who have worked hard and are continuing to work hard to make sure that no one's life is ignored. We have Selena Morrison, Executive Director of the Office of LGBT Affairs, and we have members of the LGBTQ plus Advisory Committee. Our DAO Victim Support Services Division is represented by Myra Maxwell, who is the chief of that unit, and Melanie Nelson, who heads our CARES unit within Victim Witness Services. And I also want to thank DeLay for hosting and for offering a safe, welcoming space for queer, trans, Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Our partners at the Philadelphia Police Homicide Unit work around the clock to identify and apprehend people who inflict terrible harm on families and communities. Although they could not join us today, I have asked ADA Pescator to make sure we don't forget the names I mentioned previously and many other homicide detectives who work so diligently on these cases. The DAO Homicide and Non-Fatal Shootings Unit has approved an arrest warrant for Charles Mitchell, birth date 10/13/1982. A copy of this photograph will be made available to press, and I'm going to hold it up now. Mr. Mitchell is responsible for the murder of MJ Marquise Jackson on or about December the 14th of 2022. Charles Mitchell is 6'3", weighs about 200 pounds. His last known address was on the 1800 block of Brunner, B-R-U-N-N-E-R Street. A PPD patrol alert has been issued for this individual, and we will be circulating it to the press as well. While we ordinarily do not use arrest photos or other photographs of suspects, we do that when we have someone who is not under arrest and needs to be under arrest, because it assists us and assists PPD and assists the public in identifying that person wherever it is he may be running and wherever it is he may be hiding. If and when Charles Mitchell is apprehended, my office will charge him with murder, abuse of corpse, and tampering with evidence. This individual is armed and dangerous, or at least should be considered to be that, and members of the public who have information about his whereabouts or activities are urged to call 911 or the PPD tip line, which is 215-686-TIPS. That's 215-686-8477 immediately. For more on this investigation, as well as the ongoing investigation of the Thanksgiving Day murder of Shahir Diamond Jackson McDonald, it's my pleasure at this time to call up DAO Homicide Non-Fatal Shooting Unit Supervisor Joanne Pescatore.
Thank you, DA Krasner. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, families of murder victims. As the DA said, the detectives in the homicide unit, as well as myself and my other people that I supervise in my unit, we work very hard with the detectives to bring these cases in. The two detectives in this case, Detective Matt Berkheimer and Detective Michael Lidwell, worked very hard, and Mike Lidwell is still working to solve the case of who killed Diamond Jackson McDonald. Charles Mitchell is in fact wanted. I approved charges for his arrest back in January of 2023. The decedent in that case, Marquise Jackson, was at Mr. Mitchell's house, was left in the backyard, suffered traumatic injuries to his head, and if any help would have gotten, he may have survived. Mr. Mitchell is in fact wanted. Anyone who has any information on his whereabouts can call the homicide unit at 215-686-3334. You can also contact the fugitive squad, that's Sergeant Mark Jones, if you have any information on his whereabouts. With regard to the investigation of Diamond, Detective Lidwell, who I spoke to briefly before I came to this press conference today, is still working on this case. He's hit a wall. He needs your help. Anyone who has any information, even if you don't think it's information that might be helpful, you just don't know, please contact Detective Michael Lidwell or email him, michael.lidwell@phila.gov. Call the homicide unit. Leave an anonymous tip. There are rewards in these cases. You can get money if you give information that leads to a successful prosecution. Please, these people deserve justice. Their family members were taken from them. Please help them. Any information at all that you can give us, we will gladly accept. Thank you.
Thank you, ADA Pescatore. It's now my pleasure to call forward Marquia Jackson.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for everyone's time today. Thank you for allowing me this platform to bring more awareness to my brother's case. I really hope that someone comes forward very, very soon with the proper evidence, not even proper evidence, the proper person to be able to be charged and prosecuted to the highest extent for my brother's murder. My brother was not a bad person. No one deserves to be heinously taken out of this world at the hands of another human being. We were all created by God. So therefore, we all deserve a chance to live full, healthy, well-rounded lives. And on December 12th, December 14th, my brother was murdered at the hands of Charles. And my family is very uneasy at this point, so we need anyone to come forward with any kind of information, whether it's what he has on or where he possibly could be or his whereabouts, who he hangs with. Please let us know as soon as possible to get him off the street. My brother deserves justice. My family deserves justice, as well as the other people that's standing behind me. Their families deserve justice as well. So please come forward. This is not an easy thing to navigate. Grief is very, very hard to deal with. I knew my brother for 29 years. God gave me that privilege. And he was my protector, my best friend. And now he's not here anymore. And it's definitely difficult. Excuse me. So yes, just excuse me. Yes, just please, 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 I beg of you, anyone, to come forward to help my family, to be able to sleep again at night, and to be able to get answers. One of the things that Charles said to my mother, to her face, when my mom found my brother, was, I didn't know if that was a man or a woman. And gender should never matter. Nothing about gender or what this person does in their daily lives should be a reason for you to kill someone and to leave them outside, stripped of their clothes, of their shoes, and to beat them to death. That is very, very heinous. So please come forward for my family. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Now my pleasure to call for Linda Jackson, who will discuss the loss of her daughter Diamond. She's not here yet? Okay, all right, we'll call up Linda Jackson a little bit later. It's now my pleasure to introduce ADA Helen Park, who secured the third-degree murder conviction of Abdullah I. El-Amin for the 2020 murder of Tracy Mia Green, and LGBTQ plus liaison Kelly Burkhart, Myra Swan, and Kiara Anderson, who are nieces of Tracy Mia Green.
Thank you, Dean. Wanted to give you a little bit of background about the case involving Tracy Mia Green's murder. The defendant's name is El-Amin Abdullah El-Amin, I should say. The murder occurred September 28th of 2020, and Mr. El-Amin was stopped by 16th District officers for running a stop sign. When they stopped him, they found Mia in the passenger seat, suffering from multiple gunshot wounds. This was around 8 o'clock in the morning. At trial, the defendant claimed that he was acting in self-defense. He gave several versions of what had happened. Originally, he told the officers that that Mia had just jumped into his car and claimed that somebody else shot her. Then his story changed. It evolved about 3 more times. Ultimately, his version at trial was that he was acting in self-defense. He painted Mia as somebody who was violent, aggressive, trying to rob him, a drug addict, any and all stereotypes that you can think of were thrown at Mia Green. The jury rejected this. They found Mr. El-Amin guilty of third-degree murder and possessing an instrument of crime. Back on March 3rd of 2023, the judge who oversaw the trial sentenced Mr. El-Amin to 17 and a half to 35 years of incarceration. I did not have the personal privilege of knowing Mia, but the community that rallied around her and the stories that I've heard from her family make it very clear that Mia was someone who always strived to be true to who she was. And I think that it is therefore very fitting that through the process of trial and sentencing, where at trial the jury rejected his claim of self-defense and his version of who Mia was, and at sentencing the judge rejected the defense's version of how he had acted in self-defense because he was triggered. They actually presented 2 doctors who testified for the defendant and to support his claim that he, because of his troubled past, had been triggered into shooting Mia. The judge rejected that. So I find it very telling that this process reflects the power of truth, the power of truth over lies that try to obscure what actually happened. I'm thankful to the jurors for seeing through those lies and for rendering justice to Mia. And like I said, there's no verdict or sentence that can bring Mia back. But I do hope that the family can find some sense of peace. I'll turn it over now to Kelly.
So I'm just going to be super brief. I also, excuse me, have been with Miss Pam for almost 3 years now since this incident happened. And it's been devastating to the family. You can see a lot of her family here and a lot of Mia's family here. And the one thing that I've learned is that exactly what Marquia said, is that, you know, it doesn't matter who we are, and that's exactly how this family feels. I'm going to briefly speak, because we have two things from the cousins. This is how much Mia was loved from the cousins and from other family members. A lot of hearts were broken upon receiving the news of this tragedy. Tracy/Mia had a pure soul, full of life, growing gracefully. Tracy/Mia deserved better, deserved love and respect. Mia's name deserved to be said along with the rest, not just a name or a victim number. Tracy's a granddaughter, grandson, son, daughter, brother, sister, uncle, aunt, cousin, was God-fearing and loving. A change has to happen in this cruel world. We will speak forever Tracy Mia Green's name. Forever, your forever cousins, Kim, Chris, Tor, Bronx, and Dave Butler. And just super quick from other cousins, other nieces, thank you, because we're going to let you all speak in a second. But I want to, you know, be true to the family, right, and be true to their experiences and true to the trauma that they've endured. Tracy Mia was my favorite. I enjoy and love every moment of time I spent with them. We were all broken when we found out the bad news. Tracy Mia Green deserves better, was a great person and a loving person and always caring. We will never stop until we get justice. The LGBTQ community needs a better, safe life, just as us others. Tracy Mia was a beautiful soul, and everything good everything good you can think of. And then there's just one last super quick thing that I really loved here. It was a story from one of the nieces. The last time we've seen each other, we ate chicken together, and I never liked chicken. And it was we were stealing each other's chicken out of a bag that we had. This memory will sit in a moment in time. I'd like to bring up the nieces to also give their. Yeah.
Losing my uncle was probably one of the things that hurt me most in life. I never thought he would leave that early because in my head, I always thought he would be here long enough to watch me grow up. The death, I couldn't believe it. When I was told the news, I didn't know what to think. There was no way he could really be gone forever. The pain didn't really hit me until the day of the funeral and seeing him laying there lifeless, knowing he wouldn't speak back to me or even hug me to comfort me, no matter how hard I called out for him. I used to pray and wish that it was all just some horrible dream and I would wake up and see him standing right next to me. But as time progressed, I realized that wasn't going to happen. I used to cry alone for hours because I thought I couldn't let anyone see how hard this affected me and how badly I still wished that I could have took his place for him, just so the rest of my family wouldn't have to live without him. But I'm a better person now. I've grown to understand that it was his time to go home to a better place and live on pain and worry free. So I forgive the person who caused this much pain to my family, not because I thought they did the right thing, but because of my own mental health. And I needed to heal, and I couldn't heal unless I forgive.
Hello. Losing my aunt has took a horrible toll on my mental health. I would never be able to fully heal from her death. My aunt was not always a woman. She was transgender. Just because someone is transgender does not make them any less equal than anyone else who identifies as straight. Unfortunately, not all people agree with that. Therefore, throughout my aunt's life, she was treated cruelly by the world. However, she persevered. She always held her head high. She stayed positive and motivated. She treated everyone with respect and kindness. She gave out genuine love. She was on a path to finding herself, to becoming who she wanted to be, to living a life she loved. Then suddenly her life was taken by gun violence. My aunt deserves to be here with me today, to be able to watch me grow up, to talk to me like old times, and be my shoulder to cry on. I hope out of this tragedy comes light. I hope we can come together to learn from my aunt's step that it is never right to take an innocent person's life. I hope that the person who took my aunt away from me knows that she will never be forgotten. This act was not worth it. Me and my family will use this experience to better ourselves, to love each other more, to unite, to overall thrive and spread our positivity throughout the world. I hope my aunt's death will have an impact on a change in the world, a step to less violence, to less judgment, to a step to a more positive world for the future generations. I hope that this world will not continue to be cruel and let her death be in vain.
Thank you so much for that. At this time, it's my pleasure to call forward Brian Keene and then Kendall Stevens. 88 Keene is going to discuss the conviction and sentencing of Tynesha Waring for the 2020 assault on Kendall Stevens. Kendall Stevens, of course, is a survivor and activist and a member of the DAO's LGBTQ+ advisory committee. Kendall will speak, among other things, about her experience as a survivor and a witness in the criminal legal system and what trans people need to feel safe and to thrive, including what they need from lawmakers, from Pennsylvania legislators. I will not come up in between the two of you, but Mr. Keene and then Ms. Stevens.
Thank you, Krasner. I can do that. Thank you, D.A. Krasner. So, this particular case involved the 2020 assault of Ms. Stevens, who is standing behind me here. Will come on up. This was a vicious assault in which Ms. Waring led at the front of a mob of people who broke into Ms. Stevens' home, assaulted her, screamed slurs at her, and endangered her life. Now, Ms. Waring was only charged with aggravated assault as a felony of the first degree, conspiracy to commit aggravated assault as a felony of the first degree, and hate crimes as a violation of a city ordinance, because Pennsylvania state law does not protect people of of LGBT plus identity as much as it does others, which is a problem that needs to be fixed. However, working through this case, we were able to come to a negotiated plea based on input from Mrs. Stevens, and I was privileged to work with someone with the wisdom and grace that Ms. Stevens showed in showing that there was a resolution to this case that did not need to have incarceration. And Ms. Waring was the only person in that mob who was identified. She was also the only person who took responsibility for her actions. This was a hateful crime where it is the worst thing that Ms. Waring has ever done in her life, but it does not need to be the end of her life. Just like this was a terrible thing to happen to Ms. Stevens, it does not have to define her either, because I believe we were able to get justice in this case. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Stevens now, who can explain more, but I do want to thank you very much, Kendall, for everything that you did in this case for us. You can have it in the stand. That might just be a me problem.
Yeah, thank you.
I want to take the time to honor and respect the power and strength in this room today. It's not easy to stand in front of a bunch of cameras, bearing your tortured soul to the world. And just take a look at the collateral damage of violence and hate. This is what happens. It's not just the individual that is murdered or attacked. It is also the family that has to reel and deal with the lost loved ones that were robbed from them. And I guess I stand wondering how many more attacks and murders on trans-identified people will it take for state lawmakers to sign into a bill, a protected act of our hate crime ordinance that will include LGBTQ plus identified individuals. You know, when I was invited to speak at the Senate Majority Policy Committee hearing as a trans activist, I begged lawmakers, begged them to sign into action a bill that will protect us. And those pleas were denied. When I was first attacked in August of 2020, that day was very exciting because it was my first day at Temple University. And that was a big feat for me to even be in higher education with a life that was bestowed to me, being homeless for almost 7 years of my life, living on the street, pillar to post, having to live out of personal dignity and integrity to survive, being denied jobs at McDonald's because I was told I'd be too much of a distraction to the customers because of my trans identity. The things I had to do to survive, that we had to do to survive, should not be used against us to paint us as perpetrators instead of the victims that we are. We deserve better than what we have gotten. We're human beings. And I thought that all lawmakers were trustees of the human condition. I still want to believe that. We have to sign this measure into a bill to protect us, a preventative measure. We are not unworthy minorities. We're human lives in the balance. How much more bloodshed is needed? I don't know. How many more families have to be grief-stricken and in pain because they lost their loved ones? We are tired of hearing rest in peace and rest in power. That peace and power should be experienced while we're alive. Liberation for us should not happen in death. It should happen in life. Please, we deserve better. I'm tired of the broken families. I'm tired of the tears. I'm tired of the pain. And when that woman came into my home and beat me senseless in front of my children, they suffered. They thought they were witnessing my murder. You have any idea the impact that had on them? My youngest kid missing the bed, thinking that every time I walked out, I wouldn't come back home. And I get to tell my story, but so many people don't. Diamond will not be able to tell her story. Mia will not be able to tell her story. MJ will not be able to tell his story. That's such a travesty. A lot of people have a lot of hate in their hearts for trans people. And that debt in their hearts needs to be fixed. The onus cannot be on us, trans people, to fix that hate. Okay? We cannot usher into a season of healing and love unless we have collective action with all of us, loving one each other, understanding each other. I'm tired of hearing about science and biology and morally right and wrong. No, human beings just need to live and thrive in their truths, not yours, theirs. Respect their truths like you want yours respected. You cannot have license to take a life. You cannot do that. That's what's morally wrong. Now, first day of Temple, I was attacked. And I'm set to graduate in May with a 4.0 GPA. And that's hard. It was hard for me to do. I went to class the next day after I got beat because let me tell you something. No one's going to steal my pride. No one's going to steal my power. And I have to step up and speak up for my people and let them know that we have to still keep charging forward and not be martyrs. We won't be martyrs. Please, I want to ask again for state lawmakers to do the right thing. We are your constituents too. We are people. You don't have to understand us. You don't have to agree with our lives and lifestyles. That's not a requirement for you to do the right thing. A stroke of a pen can save countless lives. Our lives hang in the balance. Do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you for that. It is now my pleasure to introduce Natasha Daniela de Lima McGlynn, Executive Director of the Anti-Violence Partnership of Philadelphia.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Natasha Daniela de Lima McGlynn. I am the Executive Director of Anti-Violence Partnership of Philadelphia, or as we fondly call it, AVP, because it could be a mouthful otherwise. It is an honor to be here and to participate at this conference, and I will preface that with that I am dedicating what I'm about to say to Eric Pope. Since 1983, AVP has been on the front lines of addressing the cycle of violence in Philadelphia. And we do that by providing a wide range of intervention, prevention, and support services to victims of violence and co-victims of homicide. As a victim service agency, our incredible team of state licensed therapists, counselors, and victim advocates provide holistic, trauma-informed services for victims and survivors to promote healing in their lives and in their communities. I am proud to share that a majority of our leadership at AVP identifies as members of the LGBTQIA+ community, and we are committed to supporting all victims and survivors, and we are making efforts to ensure our team, our entire team, can adequately and effectively respond to the needs of victims and survivors from the LGBTQIA+ community. What we know about victimization is that victimizations are often underreported. Victims and survivors might fear retaliation. They might feel ashamed or embarrassed about what happened to them. They might not feel that if they were to talk to somebody or report it, they would be taken seriously. And they might not feel like they might receive the support that they need. What we also know is that victims and survivors of violence from the LGBTQIA+ community are underreporting instances of violence. So I'm here on behalf of AVP to tell you we see you and we can help you. If you are a member of the community and have experienced victimization and are hesitant to report, contact us, reach out to us, please. We will support you with respect, safety, dignity, integrity, confidentiality, and no judgment. Our advocates will be by your side throughout the whole process. You don't have to be alone in any of this. The increase in violence against the LGBTQIA+ community affects all of us. This violence is being driven by hatred. It starts with slurs, it incites acts of violence, and then the next thing you know, we have policies that are stripping us of every rights that we were supposed to be afforded. And this hate can be weaponized by achieving its goal of creating a them versus us. And that can be applied to, say, immigrants, or to communities of color. These are intersectional identities. I strongly do believe that we can stand up together to this hate and we can work together to effect change. And despite all the pain and grief that is so heavily felt in this room, I am encouraged because this is a room full of individuals and community leaders and people who are passionate and dedicated to changing things. And to that effect, I did do some Googling, and I must give some recognition. Our Philadelphia District Attorney's Office is the only district attorney's office in the United States that has an LGBTQIA+ liaison. who is not a law enforcement member, by the way. I think it was at Los Angeles. And the fact that we do have that is speaking measures to what we're capable of doing. And so Kelly Burkhart, I don't know where you are, but you are the unsung hero. Thank you for all you do for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all the speakers for expressing yourselves so well. I have a couple more comments, then we'll take some questions. Once again, we are urging anyone who has accurate and truthful information that could lead to the arrest of Charles Mitchell, wanted for the murder of MJ Jackson, to contact Philly Police. We're also urging anyone who has truthful information that could help police solve the November 24, 2022 murder of Shahir Diamond Jackson to call 911 or submit a tip, which you can do anonymously if you must, to the Philly Police tip line. That is 215-686-TIPS. That's 215-686-8477. Everybody who is here today, families, survivors, activists, allies, is here because these terrible losses of life are happening in a larger political context of continuous untruth, hatred, bigotry that is directed at trans children, trans adults, drag queens, LGBTQ plus people. These attacks on queer and trans people are attacks on every single one of us. According to the Human Rights Campaign, at least 37 transgender and gender nonconforming people were killed in the U.S. in 2022. MJ and Diamond, sadly, are among them. So far in 2023, at least 6 transgender and gender nonconforming people have been killed. Make no mistake that this violence is happening at a time when there has always been political violence sanctioned or perpetrated by government on trans people. But we are in a time that is even more disturbing than most. And that is for every reason you will find in today's newspaper or on television. That's because we have a governor in Florida who tells us not to even say gay, not to even teach about LGBTQ people, for LGBTQ plus teachers not to be even able to talk to their classes about who they are and who they choose to call family. That is an elected official turning up the volume on hate. And he's got similar messages about other groups of people as well. Or you can go to Tennessee, where I guess you can't do a drag performance anymore. Those are elected officials seeking to promote themselves by means of hatred and bigotry. Well, it wasn't that long ago that in Orlando, Florida, the same state where the Florida governor is basically sowing mayhem, that in that state we had a mass shooting of people who were LGBTQ plus in a nightclub. It wasn't that long ago. And I say that because there is a direct and there is an indirect connection here. Yes, there are people who simply go out to harm LGBTQ plus people, transgender people. But there are also people who figure they can get away from it because a judge won't care, or because police won't care, or because a jury won't care. And why is it that they think that? They think it because of the poison that is coming out of the mouth of the Florida governor. And they think that because of the poison that is coming out of the mouths of some elected and government officials in Pennsylvania and Tennessee and Texas and any number of other states that I could name, and you know that it's all over the country. Well, this is the city of brotherly love, sisterly affection, and non-binary niceness. And we are not having it. You want to be a bigot, you want to be a hater, don't try it in Philly, because we are not having it. We will call you out on this, and we will hold you accountable on this, and we will make sure that this justice system works for everybody. because this will be an even-handed system where any life lost is crucially important to us. It will be an even-handed system where all defendants are accountable for the crimes that they commit, and hate is no excuse. It's what we're going to have. You don't have to go far, sadly, to see more of this. You can go to Bucks County, which right now is embroiled in dealing with targeted attacks on trans and queer kids and the teachers who seek to support and protect them. That attack is funded by wealthy right-wingers and is being executed by none other than Bill McSwain, our former Trump-appointed U.S. attorney who managed to light $10 million on fire in an election and finish where? Somewhere towards the bottom. Well, he's still peddling hate. It's been his specialty for a long time. And he's peddling it in Bucks County this week. Bucks County is better than that. And Philadelphia is not having that, so we are clear. The time is now for all Philadelphians to show up for our most vulnerable neighbors and to show up for the queer and trans community. There is a Trans Day of Visibility, which is coming on March the 31st, a Friday. And it will be marked by the Philly Trans March at City Hall. Friday's a good day to march at City Hall. The theme of this year's march is Rise for Trans Lives. We all need to get together and show our trans and queer neighbors in Bucks County and all the PA counties how we are in Philly. That we love them and we have their backs. Let's show the country how Philly shows up when vile politicians, full of lies, full of hate, full of bigotry, want the poison coming out of their mouths to endanger people. Their millionaire backers can spend that money, and we will make sure it has no effect because we will not be divided and conquered in our community. On March 31st at City Hall, 5 p.m., we will be there. We hope you will join us to Rise for Trans Lives. You can follow at Philly Trans March on Instagram for updates and information. Are there any questions at this time for any of these interesting and important people? I'll just start right and I'll go to the left. Yes, please.
Hi, Dave Krasner. Can you comment a little bit more, or can you comment on the motive that's being looked at for the murder of MJ?
Let me check with AD Pescator.
The motive, per the defendant, they were doing drugs. He told many stories to the detectives when the detectives were at his house, and later than that. Northwest detectives initially investigated the incident before it was ruled a homicide. The motive, he beat him. I don't know why, I can't tell you why, and then he let him go out in the yard and left him there to die. He was out in that yard for probably 12 hours. If someone had gotten him aid, he might have survived.
My other question, Kendall spoke about it. Can you comment on what Pennsylvania lawmakers need to do specifically to protect the LGBTQ plus community?
Did you want to hear from Kendall or did you want to hear from me? Well, Kendall raises a very important point, which is that if we are going to have laws that make it an additional crime to act against particular groups based upon hate, then LGBTQ plus people should be in that group because they are no less important than the other groups are there. So that is a good start. That our hate crime statute should encompass LGBTQ people in general, so they have similar protections to other groups.
Philadelphia.
Yes. I compose myself. So a few things. As stated, again, we do need our state lawmakers to step up, do the right thing, and include LGBTQ plus identified people as a protected class under PA's existing hate crime statute. Also, too, I have to mention that the criminal justice system here in Philadelphia is turning on its access in favor of people like myself, LGBTQ plus identified people. There are people working inside of the system to implode systemic injustice. And I know that historically, the criminal justice system has not benefited LGBTQ plus people. And in fact, they have harmed LGBTQ plus identified people. And that is changing. We do have an advisory board for the DOA. Even with the PPD, we have a liaison committee where you have community members, advocates, activists who are serving on these boards. They are informing policy, okay? They're creating change. And I know it's a tough ask for the community to believe in a system that has not served you, but know that things are changing. We have never had the type of staunch allyship like we have today. This collective power that we have will allow us to usher in a new era of protections that are pro-LGBTQ and that will finally secure and protect us so we feel confident as we're walking out in our truths that we're not going to be harassed, humiliated, threatened, attacked, and murdered just for living in an honest manifestation of our truths. That's our birthright. So I am so appreciative of the DA's office, Larry Krasner, of course Kelly Burkhardt, and all the wonderful ADAs, and people who just do so much of the good work to help protect us. I want to give a shout out to the LGBTQ Affairs Office, Selena Morrison, who is doing the great work that needs to happen to help protect us. With the mayor's office, thank you. Thank you, sister. Gallet, William Way, Babashi, Philly Fight. The list goes on and on. It is exhaustive. So I want to thank all of us. But it takes all of us to step up in the spirit of collective action so that we can impress upon lawmakers the urgent need, the vital need to put into action laws that will protect us so we're not living in a constant state of hypervigilance. Thank you.
All right, I am trying to proceed in orderly fashion here. Are there additional questions as I move this way? Yes, please.
Yeah, speaking of the Office of LGBT Affairs, this question is for Selena. Would you be able to elaborate a little bit on what the office is doing to sort of engage with this issue?
Can you come up to
I hadn't planned on speaking.
That's okay.
You know that.
I didn't mean to
I told you that. We work collaboratively with the DA's office, victim services, community organizations, and the families of the deceased.
We immediately connect with each other. So we immediately connect with each other. Whether we hear about it through our office, I'll reach out to Selena or vice versa. So we have a pretty open line of communication.
Thank you.
All right, are there any other questions as I move to the left, which is where I'd like to go? Are there any other questions?
Can you just have some people bring up pictures and identify everything? Just the pictures, each picture?
Let me check.
Yeah,
Are you
okay.
okay? Are you okay with doing that?
Absolutely.
So if you would then just step up and identify who is depicted in that photograph.
Here are two photos of my brother MJ, born as Martika Jackson, but departed the world as MJ, Marquise Jackson. And this is him. MJ is here with us today as well. He's around my neck. And I shouldn't be standing here. Well, not to say I shouldn't. I didn't know ever in my life that I would be standing in a room full of people holding his photo, telling about him, excuse me, and wearing him around my neck. I never thought that that would happen. Thought he was going to be old with me one day.
and I thought I was gonna be pushing him in a wheelchair or something. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. So, thank you. So I walk in my house every day and I see this photo of MJ. And I have no reason but to smile and laugh because he's still with me. He's in my blood. He's in my stance. I'm MJ as well. And so I'm MJ times 2 now, since I have him with me everywhere I go. So yes, this is my brother, and he did not deserve that. No victim, no one deserves that again. I have to reiterate that again. No one deserves to leave the world in a heinous way, to be beaten or to just to be removed because of who they are and what they believe in and what they love. So thank you all, and thank you to the Galilee Center as well, Galilee, for welcoming my brother and having resources for my brother to be able to be himself and to be able to be free and to be the unapologetic person he's always taught me to be. So I thank you all today so much for welcoming him and having a safe space for other trans people, other LGBTQIA plus members as well. We all deserve a place that we can call home and that we feel safe and that we're always going to be uplifted in. And this was MJ's place. So thank you all so much. Thank you, as well as thank you, Kelly, as well as Larry Krasner.
Markia, is there any way you could spell your name for us also?
Yes, it's spelled Markiya. Last name is Jackson as well.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you all for your time today.
This is Tracy Mia Green, my uncle, and he identified as a transgender woman, but I like to call him my uncle because that's what I always see him as. So this is who he is.
And this here is, we have Diamond Jackson McDonald. Thank you very much. And of course, taken away from us too soon. And her family could not make it here today. They tried. And I look at this photo, I see a beautiful spirit, and I just don't want this to be me. I don't want someone holding up my photo. I don't want me to hold up anybody's photo as a victim of crime, a victim of violence. So, to her family, my heart goes out, and I want them to know that they have the full support of the LGBTQ community and our allies if they need us. Thank you.
All right. I just have one final comment. Are there any other questions, or have we covered it? Looks like we've covered it. I just want everyone to understand that Philadelphians and the DA's office stand against bigotry. We stand against hatred. We stand against people who have blood on their hands. But we are also going to say what needs to be said by elected officials who have blood on their lips. We're not going to tolerate people who spread untruths, bigotry, and hatred, because what they are doing is dehumanizing others. And when people are dehumanized, then they are easier to kill. So we are not having that. I think the people who are saying these things know what they're doing. I think they don't care about how they endanger other people. And it is my hope that next time they come up for the verdict of the voters will say exactly what they deserve, which is if you got blood on your lips, you can go find another job and you're out of office. And we will replace them with people who don't stand for that. Thank you very much.